They didn't hear me come in. The side door was unlocked, same as it always was on Sunday afternoons, and I had stepped inside the way I had 100 times before quietly, carrying something warm, expecting to be welcomed. I was holding a container of beef barley soup. I'd made a full pot that morning, enough for 2 families. The kind of soup you make when the temperature drops below zero and the wind off Lake Ontario has that particular bite that gets into your bones. I had driven 40 minutes on icy roads to bring it to them. My daughter was in the kitchen. Her husband was somewhere down the hall. Their voices were low, but the house was small, and I was already halfway to the kitchen when I heard her say it. She was on the phone. I could tell by the pauses. She keeps showing up, Claire. I can't keep doing this. Last week it was muffins. Before that, she rearranged my pantry while I was at work. She has a key, and she lets herself in like she owns the place. A pause. Kevin thinks we should ask her to transfer the house into our names now. Get ahead of the estate stuff before it becomes complicated. He says it makes sense financially. She's 64, she's on her own. What is she holding on to it for? Another pause. Then, softer. She means well, I know. But honestly, she's becoming a burden. A burden. I stood in the hallway with the soup in my hands, and I did not move. I was afraid that if I moved, something would break either the container or me, and I wasn't sure which would be worse. I set the soup down on the little table by the entrance, the one my daughter had taken from my house 2 Christmases ago and never returned. I zipped my coat back up. I opened the side door as quietly as I had come in. The drive back to Oakville took 50 minutes because of the snow. I did not turn the radio on. My name is Margaret. I am 64 years old. I am a retired registered nurse, widowed 11 years ago when my husband passed from a cardiac event at 58. I raised 2 children in the same 3-bedroom bungalow in Oakville where I still live. The house my husband and I bought for $190,000 in 1991 and which would sell today for well over $1 million. I shoveled my own driveway until last year when my shoulder started refusing. I pay my property taxes on time. I grow tomatoes in summer. I make soup from scratch. I did not think I was a burden. I sat at my kitchen table that night and I thought about the last 3 years, about how often I had driven to my daughter's house in Burlington, how many times I had watched my grandchildren so she and Kevin could have a weekend away, how I paid for my granddaughter Emma's figure skating for 2 years because they were between things financially, how Kevin's car loan had my name on it, how when the basement flooded last April, I had written a check for $4,000 without being asked because she had cried on the phone and I could not bear to hear her cry. I never added it up before. That night, I did. I got out a yellow legal pad, the same kind I used to use for shift notes at the hospital, and I wrote it all down. Not to be vindictive, just to see it clearly for the first time. The car loan co-signed in 2019. $14,000. Emma's skating fees over 2 years. $4,800. The basement flood. $4,000. The short-term help when Kevin lost his contract job in 2021. $6,500, which was supposed to be a loan. Groceries, gas cards, birthday money. Half of their summer vacation to PEI the year before last. Christmas presents I bought that were given with Kevin's name on the tags. I stopped adding when I reached $38,000. I had never once thought of it as money. I thought of it as love. I did not sleep that night. Not really. I sat by the window in the small room I use as a study, and I watched the snow fill the street, and I thought about my mother. She had been a woman who gave without stopping and was thanked without meaning, and she died in a long-term care facility in Mississauga, where my aunt visited her every week, and my uncle visited at Christmas, and her own children scattered into their lives like seeds in wind. I had promised myself I would not be that woman. I thought I had kept that promise. I was not sure anymore. In the morning, I called my friend Diane. We had worked together at the hospital for 15 years before she retired to Guelph. She was the kind of woman who did not offer empty comfort. and I needed that. She said you're becoming a burden, Diane repeated back to me, while standing in a house you've helped pay for, more or less. And Kevin wants the house transferred. That's what she said. Diane was quiet for a moment. Then, Margaret, call Ruth. Ruth was my lawyer. I had used her for my husband's estate, and once years ago for a boundary dispute with a neighbor. She was practical and clear, and she did not waste words. I called her office that same morning. We met 2 days later at her office on Trafalgar Road. Ruth was in her early 60s herself, silver-haired, unhurried. She did not comment on what I told her beyond asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she folded her hands on the desk. You want to review your estate documents. I want to change them, I said. And I want to understand what I'm actually holding. The house, the RRSP, the investments. What's mine? What they can and cannot touch. She nodded slowly. You're in a better position than you might feel right now. Nothing has been signed over. Your assets are yours. We spent 2 hours going through everything. My will, which was outdated and left the house and everything else to my daughter as primary beneficiary. My power of attorney, which named her as the decision-maker if I became incapacitated. By the time I left, I had instructed Ruth to begin the process of changing both. I would not remove my daughter entirely. Not yet. But I would create a trust for my grandson Thomas. He was 22, finishing a forestry degree at the University of New Brunswick. He was the one who called me every Sunday evening not to ask for anything, just to talk. He had driven home from Fredericton last February in a snowstorm to sit with me on the anniversary of his grandfather's death. He brought Tim Hortons, and we looked at old photo albums until midnight. He never once asked what I was worth. I did not tell anyone about the meeting with Ruth. I drove home through the gray January afternoon and stopped at the grocery store and bought food for one person for 1 week. I did not pick up anything for my daughter's house. I did not buy extra. It felt strange. It felt, quietly, like something beginning. 3 days later, my daughter called. Her voice was careful in the way it gets when she wants something. Mom, Kevin and I were thinking maybe we could do Sunday dinner this week. The kids would love to see you, Emma's been asking. I noticed she did not say she had been asking. I'll let you know, I said. A pause. She was not used to that answer from me. Is everything all right? I'm fine, I said. I just have some things on my mind. Okay. Another pause. Well, let us know. We hung up. I stood in the kitchen holding the phone, and I realized my hands were not shaking. That surprised me. Thomas called that Sunday as he always did. I did not tell him everything, but I told him enough that I had been doing some thinking, that I was reviewing some things, that I was well. You sound different, he said. Different how? I don't know. More like yourself. I thought about that for a long time after we hung up. The following week, I called my bank. I had automatic transfers set up a contribution to my daughter's household expenses that I had begun during the flood and never stopped. A standing e-transfer every first of the month that I had told myself was temporary 2 years ago. I asked to have it reviewed and canceled. The woman on the phone was pleasant. She confirmed the details and asked if I was sure. Yes, I said. I've been sure for longer than I realized. I also changed the PIN on the shared credit card I had added my daughter to during Kevin's job loss. I did not cancel it. I just changed the number. I told myself I would deal with it properly when I was ready. That afternoon I went for a walk by the lake. Bronte Harbor in January is not much to look at. Gray water, gray sky, a few hardy Canada geese refusing to leave, but I had always loved it there. My husband and I used to walk that path on Sunday mornings before the children were awake, back when quiet was something we chose rather than something that was left to us. I sat on a bench for 20 minutes. The cold did not bother me. When I got home, there was a voicemail from my daughter. She had tried the credit card at Costco and it had been declined. Her voice was controlled, but I could hear the edge underneath. Mom, I think there might be an issue with the card. Can you call me? I made dinner first. Then I called her back. I updated the PIN, I said. I should have let you know. Oh, a beat. Is there a new one? Not for that card, no. I'm consolidating a few things. Silence. Longer than usual. Consolidating. Yes. Mom, is something wrong? You're being very. I'm being thoughtful, I said. I should have been more thoughtful some time ago. She did not know what to do with that. We said goodbye civilly enough, and I stood in the kitchen afterward with a cup of tea going cold in my hand, and I felt something I had not felt in years. Not anger, not even sadness exactly. Something closer to clarity. Kevin called 2 days later. He never called me directly. In 11 years of marriage to my daughter, I could count on one hand the times he had dialed my number himself. Margaret, he said, warm in a way I recognized. It was his asking voice. I just wanted to check in. Make sure you're doing okay up there on your own. I'm well, Kevin. Thank you. Good, good. Hey, we've been thinking, and obviously nothing has to happen right away, but there's a financial planner we've been speaking to. He's had some interesting thoughts about estate planning, about how some families structure things early to avoid probate and save on taxes. I just thought it might be worth a conversation, for everyone's benefit. I let the silence hold for a moment. Kevin, I said, my estate is being handled. Right, of course. I just meant, by my lawyer. A pause. Okay. Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. He recovered quickly. He always did. No pressure, just thought I'd mention it. I appreciate that, I said. I'll keep it in mind. After we hung up, I understood that they knew something had shifted. They did not know how much. Thomas called that Sunday, and I told him I had been to see a lawyer. I told him about the trust. He was quiet for a moment. Then, Grandma, you don't have to do that. I know I don't have to, I said. That's why I'm doing it. He laughed a little. Are you okay? Really? I'm better than okay. I'm finally paying attention. He was quiet again. Then, she said something, didn't she? My mom. She didn't know I heard. What did she say? I told him. He was quiet for longer this time. I'm sorry, he said finally. You have nothing to be sorry for. I know, but I am anyway. That night I could not sleep either, but like the first night, not from pain. My mind was moving. I pulled out my husband Harold's old cardigan, the gray one, with the wooden buttons that still smelled faintly of the cedar chest, and I sat in the living room going through things I had not touched in years. There was a folder of documents at the back of the filing cabinet. Insurance papers, the mortgage discharge, receipts from renovations, and tucked inside, a greeting card in my daughter's handwriting from what looked like 2009. She would have been 19. Mom, I know I don't say it, but you are literally the strongest person I know. I don't know what I would do without you. I love you more than I can say. Thank you for everything. I sat with that card for a long time. I remembered the girl who wrote it. I was not sure where she had gone. I placed it back carefully. Then I did something I had not done in years. I got out the knitting I had abandoned in November, a gray-green wool scarf I had started for Thomas, and I knitted until 2 a.m. By the time I set it down, I felt steadier. The way you feel after a long cry or a long walk, emptied of something that needed to go. 2 weeks passed. My daughter sent a few texts, carefully worded, not quite warm, not quite cold. One mentioned that Emma had a skating competition in case I wanted to come. I sent a heart emoji and told her I would try. I did not commit. On a Thursday afternoon in late January, the doorbell rang. My daughter stood on the porch. She was wearing her work coat, the good charcoal one, and she had her hair pulled back. She looked tired. She was holding a grocery bag from Farm Boy. I brought some things, she said. Thought maybe we could talk. I stepped back and let her in. She moved through the house the way you move through a place you grew up in, familiar but careful, as if checking whether anything had changed. She set the bag on the counter. Sourdough bread, a wedge of cheese, clementines, the kinds of things I liked. I know something's going on, she said without preamble. The card, the transfers. Thomas texted me. What did he say? He said I should talk to you. That you deserve that. She looked at me. He was right. I sat down at the kitchen table. She sat across from me, which was not something she did often. Usually when she visited, she was in motion organizing something, helping with something, or waiting to leave. I came in through the side door, I said. 3 weeks ago, with soup. You were on the phone. She understood immediately. I could see it in the way her expression changed. Not guilt exactly, but recognition. Mom, I'm not angry, I said, and I meant it. I was, but mostly I finally saw something clearly. She looked at the table. What did you hear? Enough. She pressed her lips together. The thing about the house that was Kevin's idea, I shouldn't have. I was just venting to Claire. I didn't mean, you said I was becoming a burden. The word landed the way I knew it would. I know, she said quietly. I know I said that. I have never once thought of you as a burden, I said. Not when I worked weekends to pay for your university. Not when I slept in a chair beside your hospital bed after Emma was born and you had the complications. Not when I drove to Burlington in a February ice storm because you needed someone. Not once. Her eyes were wet. She did not look away. I know, she said again. It came out smaller this time. I don't think you do, I said. I think you stopped seeing me. I'm not sure when it happened, but you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a resource. And I let you, because I thought that was what love looked like. She reached across the table. I let her take my hand, but I did not squeeze back. I've changed some things, I said. The transfers are canceled. The will is being updated. Kevin's name will not appear in my estate documents, and I need you to know that none of this is punishment. It's just I needed to find out what was left between us once the money was out of the way. She was crying now, silently, the way she had cried as a little girl when she was ashamed rather than sad. I don't know how to fix this, she said. I don't either, I said. But trying to talk me into signing over my house would have been a very bad place to start. She wiped her face with her sleeve. That was wrong. I know that. Tell Kevin. She nodded. We sat for a while after that. I made tea. We ate some of the bread and cheese she had brought. We did not solve anything, but we were 2 people at a table, which was more honest than anything we had been in years. When she left, she hugged me at the door. Not the quick shoulder pat we had been exchanging for years, but a real hug. She held on longer than I expected. I miss you, she said into my shoulder. I'm right here, I said. I've been right here. After the door closed, I stood in the hall for a moment. The house was quiet in the good way. I went to the kitchen and finished the last of the tea, and then I sat down and wrote in the journal I had started the week before. She came. She listened. It wasn't enough yet, but it was something. I don't need her to be perfect. I just need her to see me. We'll find out whether she can. 3 weeks later, Ruth called to say the documents were ready. I drove to her office on a Tuesday morning. The roads were salted and clear. The sky that flat white that Southern Ontario does all through February. I signed the papers in her boardroom, the trust documents for Thomas, the updated will, the revised power of attorney, which now named Thomas and my friend Diane jointly. When I signed the last page, Ruth capped her pen and said, "How do you feel?" "Like I own something that belongs to me," I said. She smiled at that. On the drive home, I stopped at a cafe on Lakeshore. I ordered a flat white and a butter tart and sat in the window watching people walk by bundled in their coats. A woman about my age walked a small dog and talked on her phone, laughing. 2 older men shared a newspaper at the next table, disagreeing about something in low, serious tones. Ordinary things. The world going about its business. I had been invisible in my own life for a long time, not because I had faded, because I had made myself small, so that others would find it easy to grow. Thomas called that evening. I told him the trust was finalized. He was quiet for a moment. "Grandma, I want you to know this doesn't change anything for me. I'd call you every Sunday if you left me nothing." "I know you would," I said. "That's exactly why." He laughed. And then he told me about a project he was working on in the Street John River watershed, mapping old-growth stands. He talked about trees the way some people talk about old friends. I listened to every word. That night I pulled Harold's cardigan on again, and I sat by the window, and I thought about what Diane had said when I called her to tell her I'd made her copo. "You should have done this 10 years ago," she said. "I wasn't ready 10 years ago. What made you ready now?" I thought about standing in the hallway with the soup, about the yellow legal pad, about the word burden said by a voice I had known since it was small and helpless and entirely mine to protect. "I finally got tired," I said, "of disappearing. My daughter called on a Saturday in mid-February. Not Kevin first, not a text. Her. Emma has a competition in Oakville next Saturday," she said. "The arena off Dundas. She's been asking if you'll come." A pause. "I know things have been. I know there's still a lot we haven't said. But she's been working really hard, Mom. She'd love to see you there." I thought about Emma, 8 years old, missing her 2 front teeth, waking up at 5 in the morning for ice time without complaint. She had not asked to be in the middle of any of this. "I'll be there," I said. The arena was cold and loud and smelled like Zamboni exhaust, which is to say, it smelled exactly like every arena I had ever sat in from the time my daughter was Emma's age. I found a seat in the second row of the bleachers, and I wrapped my scarf around my neck, the gray-green one I had finished for Thomas, but had made a second of for myself, and I watched. Emma skated well. She fell once on a jump and got up immediately, the way kids do when they are still young enough to not be embarrassed by falling. At the end of the program, she looked up into the stands, and when she found my face, she waved both arms overhead. I waved back. My daughter was sitting 3 seats down. We had nodded when I arrived. We had not spoken much, but when Emma waved and I waved back, my daughter turned to look at me. She looked at me the way I had not been looked at in a long time, like I was real, like I was there. After, in the lobby, Emma threw herself at me in her skate guards and nearly knocked me sideways. "Grandma, did you see me fall?" I fell, but then I just kept going. "I saw," I said, holding her. "That's exactly what you do." My daughter stood nearby. Kevin was parking the car. She and I stood in the lobby while Emma chased a friend in circles, and for a moment we just watched together. "She has your stubbornness," I said. My daughter smiled. "A real one. She really does." We were not fixed. I knew that. There was still a conversation about Kevin that had not happened, still patterns between us that had grown roots over years and would not be pulled up in a morning. But there was also this. The 2 of us standing in a cold arena lobby, watching a little girl in skate guards run too fast on an indoor carpet, and something between us that had not quite closed. I drove home along the lake. When I got in, I took off my coat and boots and put the kettle on. I opened the small wooden box on the counter where I keep things that matter: Harold's watch, a photo of Thomas at age 7 holding a fish, a card from a patient I had nursed back in 1998 who had written only "You were kind," when kind was everything. I had been kind, for decades and to everyone. I had offered myself up like a table at Christmas, loaded, useful, and expected to hold. But I was not a table. I was a person who had lost the thread of herself somewhere in the giving and was now, slowly, finding it again. I sat down with my tea and opened the journal. I wrote, "Today, Emma waved at me from the ice like I was the most important person in the building. Today, I did not make myself small in a lobby to keep the peace. Today, I drove home along a road I have driven 1,000 times, and for the first time in longer than I can say, it felt like I was driving towards something." I closed the journal. Outside, the lake was dark and the lights from the far shore made small yellow streaks across the water. I sat there long enough for the tea to go cool, thinking about what it means to come back to yourself late, not too late, just late, and how it is possible, even at 64, even after years of erosion, to decide that what remains of you still matters. You're not a burden. You were never a burden. You were a person who loved generously and believed that love would be returned in kind. If someone in your life has made you feel otherwise, If you have stood in a hallway and heard words that should never have been spoken, I want you to know that the account is not closed. You are not done being counted. If this story held something true for you, pass it on. There is someone in your life who has been quiet for too long. Someone who has been driving home alone on winter roads, wondering if any of it was ever really worth it. Tell them it was. Tell them they still are. And if that someone is you, sit down, make tea, and start from where you are. Because it is not too late. It is only just beginning.